Alright, so let's start with a basic scale here. We're going to use a basic major scale to get started. And we're going to play the G major scale because we're going to start with our lowest string. And so let's just go over the 2-finger G chord first, just because it's good to know the chord that the scale corresponds with, because in addition to learning the notes of the scale, you also want to train your ear to how it sounds relative to this chord. So our 2-finger G chord, I've got my first finger of my left hand on the 2nd fret of the A string, and my 2nd finger on the 3rd fret of the high E string. And the 2 low strings are open. So just strum that a few times. That's the basic chord we were going to use for this scale. Okay? So you can strum up, or you can strum down, you can strum up, or a combination of both. Because remember, our strumming, we're going to use that same motion when we go to an individual string. It's no different. You want to use the same right hand motion. Okay, so let's get our scale down. We're going to start with our open G string, our open lowest string. And you can hit the notes as many times as you need to. And then we're going to use the 2nd fret on the lowest string. And then the 4th fret. And then the 5th fret. Let's just start with those 4 notes, so let's go back down. 5, 4, 2, and then open. One more time. Open, 2, 4, 5, 4, back down, 2, open. And don't worry too much about what you're doing with either hand right off the bat when you're first getting the notes. If you're doing all downs or down, up, if you're using just one finger, that's fine just to start. I'll show you some, the correct fingering in a second, okay? But, again, when you're just getting the notes down, just play the notes. And if you have to use one finger to start off, that's fine, okay? So remember, open, 2, 4, 5. Those are my frets. Then we're going to go up to the next string up and do the same thing. Open, 2, 4, 5. That's our last note of our scale. That's our high G. We got octaves there. Let's go back down. So we got 5, 4, 2, open, 5 on the next string down, 4, 2, open. Let's go a little faster. Change strings, open, 2, 4, 5, 5, 4, change strings, 5. Now I like to strum my G chord again, and remember, hear how it sounds relative to that chord. Okay, so that's the basic scale. Okay, so a couple things with my left hand. This is great practice for developing finger independence. I'd recommend using your first 3 fingers, 1, 2, and 3. So for each of those notes, use a different finger. So for open, obviously you don't use any fingers. And then for the 2s, the 2nd frets, I'm using my first finger. All the 4s, I'm using my 2nd finger. And all the 5th frets, I'm using my 3rd finger. So I'm going 1, first finger, 2nd finger, 3rd finger. Now I'm doing that same thing on the next string up. Again, you can stay on the notes as long as you need to, so this is really good practice to, start doing some down and ups. You just want to get your hands operating independently. You want your right hand to be able to keep moving, while your left hand changes. Or you can go faster. You want to work on not so much right when you're starting out. If you need to lift your fingers up to stretch, that's good, but that's okay. But what you want to practice eventually is keeping your fingers down. So when I add this next finger down, whatever I'm doing back here is canceled out because I'm putting a higher note down. But I still want to keep those down because I can go right back to it rather than lifting my finger up. you know, then you end up doing this a lot, and you're lifting your fingers up and putting them back down on the exact same spots. So you end up creating a lot more work for yourself, kind of unintentionally. So what you want to do is keep your fingers down to the last second possible. It also helps the flow of your songs because you get a stronger tone. You get those notes kind of ringing out to help connect your notes together, rather than, you know, if you lift your fingers up every time, the tones get cut off. So that's a really good exercise, is practice keeping your fingers down. Another thing you can do is practice your down and ups. That's really good practice for developing your tremolo, which is basically that same motion, just faster. Okay, so a couple other things you can do. Again, once you get the scale down, you don't have to go just straight up and down the scale. You can mix the notes up. So, you know, the scale is just your potential notes. You know, so I'm just mixing those notes up and trying to come up with something. Again, you might hear a song you know, because very rarely in music, even if you know a scale, are you just going to run straight up and down the scale. So you want to get familiar with, again, mixing those potential notes up in a different order. That's where you're going to get your songs from. Okay, so the last thing we want to talk about is, once you get that scale down, is a nice thing about mandolin is, since we're tuned to fifths, our strings are all tuned to fifths, we can do that same thing on a different set of strings, and it'll be a different scale. So let's start on our open D string. So let's do that same scale. We got open, 2, 2nd fret, 4th fret, 5th fret. And now next string up, open A, 2, 2nd fret, 4th fret, and 5th fret. Using my same fingers. That'd be a D scale, since we started on an open D string. Same thing if you started on the open A, that'd be an A scale. So same notes, just starting on a different string. So again, you can practice those scales on all your different strings. Now you've got scale notes that work in G, D, and A, which are very common for folk or bluegrass songs. Alright, so that's a good spot to get started. Those are great warm-up exercises. You know, I used to do those all the time for, 5-10 minutes when I'm starting out. Get your hands warmed up. Again, get your fingers moving around. You can also slide or hammer on between the notes, and we'll talk about that in future lessons. Alright, hope that helps you out. Good luck.